Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Our Years. This is Barry.
I'm Rima.
The other day, Rima and I were chatting about how now we're going into spring. It's very exciting. It's the new season and also a season where job search is kind of like at its peak, especially for new grads, right? I think March is the time when we started looking for jobs for once we graduate, like in like May, June-ish, back in a couple of years back when we were looking for jobs. And so we thought it would be like a good time to talk about networking and how to reach out to people as people are starting to look for jobs.
Yeah, I think this was particularly important for us because we moved to America for grad school. And when we moved here, we didn't have a very strong professional network. We did have friends and some family who were already working in America, but we didn't have a lot of people who were in similar jobs that we were interested in. So it was particularly important for us to set up a new network in America. I think this is super valuable for people who are both looking for jobs at this point of time, but also now is when a lot of people are making switches to they're looking for their next opportunity. So I think this is also relevant for those people.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll just be sharing some of our experiences and how we went about things, creating or building our networks so that we could reach out to people to find us job opportunities, or not find us job opportunities, but to provide opportunities for us in industries that we wanted to go into.
Yeah. So I think the first step of getting into networking is asking yourself what your career aspirations are and why you're networking.
Yeah.
Right? Whether as a new grad, you're trying to break into industry from academia, or you're trying to break into an industry that you haven't been in, and you want to make that pivot. So I think it's different. Your intent for why you want to network sort of dictates how you have to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think defining why you're doing it is really critical. I think doing your research and understanding like what your motives are, what industry you want to go into, is really important, especially when you're like out of school and you're a new grad, or whether you're pivoting to a new job, right? So you have motives of why you're doing that. So understanding very clearly why you're doing it will really help you in terms of narrowing down the people that you want to choose to chat to, and build your network essentially.
Yeah.
More to that is like what your career aspirations are, right? I think networking can come in different forms. Some people want to pivot jobs, some people want to find a new job as a new grad, and some people just want mentorship, right? I think all these are relevant and really good reasons why you should be networking. And so understanding and defining that is really important. First of all, I think it's important because it shows engagement when you are actually networking with them, and then also shows like you are driven and understand what you are looking for, and that really helps the people that you're chatting to kind of provide the right information and valuable insights, so that you can gain most out of the networking.
Yeah, I think something that's very important is you shouldn't, at any point when you are networking, you shouldn't expect the other person to tell you what to get out of that engagement, right?
Exactly.
You sort of need to go into it with knowing what you want,
Yeah.
because the other person's time is also valuable.
For
so
sure.
They need to know why you're doing it and what they can provide for you.
Yeah. So I guess like jumping right into kind of the first steps that we took, right? After defining what your goal or motives are, what were some of the first steps that you took?
I think I was in a position where I didn't know what industry I wanted to be in, and also what job profile I wanted to be in. I knew that I wanted to be in product execution, for instance, but I knew that product managers had different definitions. And I also learned of the function of a program manager while I was doing that research, right? So for me, I broke it down into certain categories of who I wanted to meet. One, it was identifying what are the different products in different industries that I was interested in. So that is talking to people in the industry already, right? Like for instance, in finance or fintech, or retail, for instance. So first identifying what category I wanted to be in. And then it's the actual job role. So then it was people who had a particular job role that I was interested in based on the description. So these people were already in that position at companies that I was interested in, right? So that sort of like helped me get the lay of the land. And then it was people who had made the switch that I was making. For instance, I was in data science and consulting, and then I wanted to go to product/program. So it was people who've gone through that journey themselves so that I can learn from their insights. And then it was people who were hiring for particular positions. For instance, on LinkedIn, people would say that they were hiring for this particular role. They sort of marketed that role on their profile, they shared it, and so on. So there were different categories on how I decided who I wanted to talk to. And it depends on what your, like we said, what your networking goal is. But those were the 4 categories that I broke my networking contacts into.
Yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of like new grads, right? Some people, and it's totally okay, some people don't know what they want to go into yet. So what would be some of like the advice and suggestions that you have for people who don't really know what they want to go into? How do they start networking?
My advice would be to do some homework on your own to understand what industry, what field, what
Right.
job description you want to do.
Yeah.
Because you can talk to people who are already in that position and you'll gain some perspective. But I think it's important for you to know what you want to do. And
For sure.
you can't expect other people to give that to you. You could get insights from having coffee chats with people already in positions you're interested in. But I think that's something that you just need to work on and understand for yourself. So when I was pivoting from data science consulting to tech, I understood that there was this position called product manager, and I did look up what it entails. But for certain job descriptions mean very different things in different companies. So I think what helped me was actually talking to product managers in existing companies like either big tech or startups and understanding what that role meant in that company. So I think what would help is knowing that you want a particular role, but the nuances of what it means in different companies, that you can set up coffee chats with people. And I think that's a good source for you to set up a network in that area, right? Yeah.
For sure.
So for instance, when I was talking to product managers in a big tech company like Microsoft, what that meant is a lot of strategy development and what it means to get buy-in from senior leadership to develop a product. So a lot of the product managers I was talking to at Microsoft they were basically trying to pitch to their leadership team on why they should be doing something. But I also spoke to product managers in, say, smaller startups that were Series D, Series E, that worked a lot on execution. They were actually trying to bring the product to life. So the role can be a very umbrella term. But I think what I would recommend is when you do your homework, know why you want to do that role, but understand what it means in different industries and different companies.
And I mean, it's totally okay, like if you don't know specifically that you want to be in a certain like product category, but I think it's important to at least do some sort of research to understand the basis of what defines program management versus project management versus product management, right? I think like that just shows that you're interested in the industry and you have the motivation to understand it better.
So I think with networking, it is uncomfortable and it is time consuming. So I would say that even if you don't have the exact network that you think would be useful for your career, do leverage the network that you already have. Reach out to people that you already know, either friends of friends or people that you worked with in the past, to understand if they have any suggestions on who you should be talking to for where you want to be. So that's, you already have warm connections. It may not be specific to what you want, but you'll get there. But do build on what you already have.
For sure. And I guess like for new grads who maybe don't have such big of a network yet, definitely like leverage your professors, your seniors, your alumni. I think that's a really good place to start. And for those who are still like, in undergrad, I think this is where it's really important to get to know people outside of your like friend circle so that, you can have and build this network within the college that you're already in. And then based off of that, to Rima's point, they can then introduce you to people they know. So it's like second, third degree. And that's the whole point of like LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I think definitely tap into your alumni connection when you are in school. And I think a lot of schools do pitch programs for the point that they have a really strong alumni network. So that should also be a consideration for you when you are networking, because your alumni and your professors already belong to the same community that you belong to. So there's already buy-in for them to sort of help you. So you're not starting from net new. So don't be afraid to just reach out to people and say, hey, we went to the same school, or hey, I took this program, or I took this class and I have these questions. And that could be a really good start.
For sure. And a lot of professors at schools, especially like in the MBA school, right? They all know people in the industry. And so like regardless of whether it's tech, finance, bio, it's all like accessible, I think, to people within schools. And then another point I wanted to make is that, these people are really willing to help, especially like if you're from the same school, right?
Yeah.
So like to Rima's point, alumni network is really a good place to start. And a lot of schools, my understanding is that they do have like a platform set up where you can reach out to alumni, where emails are provided or contacts are provided, even like their LinkedIn, and that's a good place to start. I think I've had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, you know, hey, I also graduated from Cornell Mem, you know, I'm very interested in the journey that you've been on, so would you mind setting up, or would you mind like us setting up a coffee chat to like chat through it? And like obviously for me, I'm just like, oh, okay, they're from like a similar background, they want to go like along the same journey, and I'm happy to talk through that with them.
Yeah, I like the point that you made about talking to professors, because they already have a really well established network. Professors typically have, their tenure is decades long, right? So between that time, and they have built up a lot of industry connections as well, so definitely tap into that.
We've kind of tapped into this earlier about like doing your homework, but going into it a little bit more is, I think this one's really critical for making your first impression, especially when you reach out to someone, right? You want to show them that you, one, know what you want, and know what your motives are for reaching out to them, and two is that you've done your homework and show that you have all these questions that you're already preparing to ask, so that you can make the most value, or you can gain the most value out of the time that you have with them and them with you, right? So I think doing your homework is a critical one going into networking. I think for me, right, I've had people reach out to me and kind of like ask me about topics that is not relevant. For example, I'm in hardware and like on LinkedIn, people just reach out to me because they see that I'm an EPM, and perhaps it's the branding that gets a lot of people like
attention,
their attention, but they don't even read my profile and see what I do, and they just like reach out saying, hey, like I want to chat about the software position. I think to me, right, like that is an indication that they are not, one, detail oriented, two, they haven't really looked through my profile, and as such they won't know what questions to ask. It's almost as if they're just trying to get in the door. That kind of puts me off, to be honest, and I'm not sure that that is a good impression that you're leaving on me, and for me to refer you to the right people.
I think when you are also reaching out to people, you need to be very clear on why you are reaching out to them, right? For instance, if you are trying to break into an industry and you want to understand what the current role that you're interested in means for that industry, you need to be very specific in that regard. Or if you are interested in pursuing an opportunity in that company and you want to understand more about culture in that company, for instance, you don't want to refer it, you just want to understand a culture, you need to be very specific in why you are reaching out to someone. And one thing that I would say is that when you are reaching out to someone and when you are trying to do your homework, don't only reach out to people because you're asking them for a job.
Definitely.
I think you need to establish some sort of connection with someone for them to want to refer you.
Right.
And so don't do that from the get-go. You need to work on building that relationship before you can ask for a job.
Yeah, for sure. I think like the motives will then show that you're just looking for the easy way in, and not really passionate about the industry or the role that you're looking to get into.
Yeah. So you could say that you're interested in applying to this company, but you have certain questions, right? About maybe where the company is headed, what they've liked or not liked about working for a company. So you can ask them for stuff like that, and I think that's okay. But don't straight off the bat be like, "Here's my resume. Can you refer to me?"
Yeah,
to this
I've
role.
had multiple of those, and that doesn't really make me want to reply to them, because it shows me that they haven't really thought about why they want to be in the company besides the branding of the company, or like just getting a job, for instance. Following up on that, I think, is with the research that you've done, then you'll know the right questions to ask. And I think that's really key to an effective and valuable coffee chat or interview, right? Also, this applies to interviews. Not having any questions to ask is an indication that you aren't really motivated to understand the job and aren't really passionate about what you want to get into.
Yeah.
I think having the background and preparing for the meeting is critical so that you can ask the right questions and make the interviewer feel like they're giving you valuable insights, right? At the end of the day, like they're taking time out of their busy schedule to make time for you and help you. So you want to make use of that time and also make them feel like they've also made good use of their time.
Yeah. I think this is also when you're interviewing, when interviewers and hiring managers ask
Definitely.
if you have any questions for them.
Yeah.
I think it's, those brief 5 minutes can really differentiate you and other candidates in that you've done your research and you ask insightful questions.
Yeah, I think definitely differentiating yourself from the crowd is a big one, especially because so many people are interviewing for the job. So many people are setting up these coffee chats.
Yeah.
What will leave a really good impression or a lasting impression on them are from the questions that you ask. One of the people that I've known that actually got into the job, they were interviewing for Amazon at that time.
Okay.
And I think they asked a really good question at the end of the interview, and it's regarding like why Amazon finds it difficult to break into the Asia industry. And the reason for that is because of the huge competitor right now in Asia is Shopee.
Okay.
And it's very similar to Amazon. And so like that was a really good question. I think, I believe that the interviewer was very impressed by the question because it shows that, you're really interested in the industry first off. And then second of all, you're thinking about questions that actually would be asked when you're on the job. And I think that kind of helps the interviewer imagine you being a good fit for the job, right?
Yeah. Okay, so now that you've sort of done your own research on why you want to network and who you want to network with, it's actually time to start reaching out to them.
Actually.
Yeah, which is a really difficult part because it's really uncomfortable to talk to strangers and, have a conversation going that's meaningful. And there's also a lot of rejection involved, right? You may reach out to say 20 people and one response. So networking is uncomfortable, and I do want to acknowledge that. But I think what helps is when you're doing outreach and you're trying to reach out to people, to be very specific with why you're reaching out to them. So almost have your own elevator pitch, right? When you do your homework, have an elevator pitch. When you write to people, be very concise and clear on why you're reaching out to them, and personalize the message. Make sure that you're not sending the same cookie cutter template to everybody.
Definitely.
Yeah, because first of all, people know that it is a cookie cutter message.
I've had people reach out and it's like, hi, Amanda. Hi, Jen. Sometimes even men's names like, hi, Ben. And I'm like, did you even look at my profile? Or are you copying and pasting?
Yeah, exactly. So yes, it is a numbers game. You have to reach out to a lot of people when you are trying to network. But pay attention to the message. Make sure it's personalized. Make sure you go in with clarifying what your intent is, and make sure that they have a reason to talk to you, right? Give them something compelling to talk to you about. So I would recommend reaching out to people with an elevator pitch and specifying how much time you want from them. If you want maybe a review of your resume, if you're trying to break into an industry, be very clear on your ask and make sure you're clear on what you want from them. And like I said, to the point about rejection, if you reach out to someone and give it a week, and if you don't respond, do follow up, because I think a lot of people, they just send out the one message and they don't follow up. So follow up after a week, follow up after another week if you don't hear back. But I think between 2 to 3 follow-ups, if you don't hear back, then it's just time to move on.
Right. Going back to your point about being concise, I think that's really important. You don't want to write a long essay to someone on the first or get-go, right?
Yeah.
You want to make it very clear in I want to say 3 to 4 sentences is max.
Yeah.
Showing to your points, like who you are, give a quick intro of where you are in terms of career status, and then why you want to meet them, and then to your points, putting in the time. I think on the coffee chats is really helpful, especially because the person will then, based on that, decide on whether or not they want to chat with you. If you're looking for something more than that, and that's going to be time consuming for them, the chances of them helping you is less likely.
Yeah. Go in with exactly what you want. And once you have set up that meeting, I think it's very important to be mindful of meeting etiquette. I think a lot of people, especially when you're looking for a job, you're applying to so many places, you're trying to set up coffee chats and meetups with so many people that you sort of neglect some meeting etiquette. That's what I've noticed. Sometimes when people reach out to me with meeting, trying to set up a meeting, we set up time, but they don't make it easy to set up time. For instance, they don't give me time slots to meet. Like I have to tell them when I'm free, but they're the ones who are asking, right? So you have to be proactive in when you do stuff like that. And when you're actually in the meeting, it's very important to be on time, be punctual. Don't keep the person that you're trying to network with waiting. Make sure that if you're meeting virtually, make sure that you've already given them a Zoom link, for instance, and ask them what their preference is if they do want to actually be on Zoom or they want to have a phone call.
Yep.
So, and if you are doing a virtual meeting, make sure that your audio visuals are set up and you're not having any connectivity issues. Basic things like that leave a lasting impression on a person. And there's no way that someone would want to refer you if you're late for a meeting, right? And you're unapologetic about it and haven't given them any notice or reason.
One of the ways that I think I've had pretty good feedback, what I did previously, is that I would list out 3 time slots, or like 3 days, and just be like, I am free from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Let me know if you're free during that time, and I'll send you a link.
Yeah. To your point about just time slots and just handling the logistics of that, a lot of people also have their Calendly set up where either on their LinkedIn or on their website, they have links to their Calendly where there's already spots that they've set up that they are open to network with other people. So just check if people are already using those tools. That also shows that you've been proactive in the research that you've done into them.
Reading into the details, right, or paying attention to the details. I've also had in the past where there were confusion or miscommunication in the time. When I said like PST, California time, they're
Classic.
expecting like New York time, and just things like that, right? And or not accommodating your time because they're in another part of the world.
Yeah.
Going back to the point, it's just I think this is normal etiquette. It's when you're asking for a favor, you kind of try and accommodate their schedule because they're doing you the favor. Stressing what I mentioned earlier about like doing your research on their background and catering or customizing your questions based on their career journey, I think is really important and leaves a lasting impression, right?
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is come with like generalized questions that you can find online.
Yeah.
That will make them feel like, their time is invaluable. What they have to provide or value they have to share is through their personal journey and experience. And so going through their LinkedIn profile and having questions specific based on their profile and their journey is really helpful. On top of that, I think that goes to show that after having like looked at their profile, you have questions specific for them, shows that you really know what you want, right?
Yeah.
Because like obviously this goes with anything, right? After you read like the background, the blurb, and it doesn't interest you, you kind of move on. But the fact that you have read through like their background and history, and then you have questions for them, shows them that you're really motivated to understand more about the industry.
Yeah. I think it's important to go into these networking meetings with a curiosity mindset. Be open to listening instead of just asking for favors and currying for a referral, for instance, right? Go in with trying to understand exactly what drove you to reach out to them in the first place, whether they're a subject matter expert in their field or whether you're trying to break into their field or whether you have questions on the industry or whether you have questions on the company. Just be very open to listening and don't just be a very passive listener and you're just waiting to ask for a job referral, right? That really comes across in meetings. So I think it's important to go in more with a listening mindset and have curiosity about why you're talking to them. Yeah, so I think when you're ending the meeting, I think it's important to also discuss what the next steps are. Maybe it was just a one-off conversation that you wanted to understand with this person, or if you are interested in interviewing for the company, maybe you can say that you are interviewing in the future, and if you have any questions, would they be open to talk to you? Or if they also have suggestions on who you should be talking to, right? For instance, if they're in the industry that you're trying to break into, they already have a network that is useful for you. So also ask them what is a useful forum or person to like reach out to, and they'll have valuable suggestions. And end the meeting on a note of if there are any follow-ups, how you're going to reach out and respond to them. And near the end of the meeting, do ask if you can do something for them in return, right? And maybe that's not something that you can do immediately, but do open up that you are open to helping them as well.
What sort of questions do you ask there?
So in the past, I was talking to someone when I was in the East Coast and I was moving to California for work. I was talking to a technical program manager, and I think he really liked mentoring people, and he did like paying it forward. And he was trying to set up meetups in cities, right? But obviously, there's a lot that goes into setting up a meeting, setting up meetups. So I did try to tell him that I would be open to volunteering my time to helping him set up those meetups. So maybe it was publicizing the events or doing the actual admin work of setting up a space or like taking in registrations. So that also showed that I wasn't just reaching out to him to curry a favor, and that I was also willing to volunteer my time.
Yeah.
And that made a good impression. And we've still stayed in touch. So it's just like things like that really go a long way in showing them what kind of person you are and how your values are aligned, for instance.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, right, like the biggest point here is that you want to show your appreciation for their time and the favor or the value that they've brought for you.
Yeah.
I think like previously, obviously, in the times that we were networking, I did a lot of like coffee chats virtually. And I think like showing your appreciation goes a long way. That shows them that you value them and have gained like lots of insightful information from them. And that makes them want to help you more.
Yeah. And someone who I was talking to when I was interviewing for positions in fintech, they actually mentioned that their kid now is looking for internships in certain companies. And I did have a second degree connection in that company, and I was able to set that up. So you never know how you can help people, but do let them know that you are open to it and it's not a one-sided transaction.
Yeah, for sure. An example I had to your point is like when we stayed in touch after connecting on coffee chats, and then when they were looking to pivot into tech from a different role, then they saw that I was at my now company, and they reached out to me asking me for like information or to get on a coffee chat so that they can learn about the role they wanted to pivot into.
Yeah, I think it's small steps like this that actually keep that network warm. And a lot of people start networking only when they're trying to look for a job, for instance, right? But you sort of need to have an active network when you need it.
Yep.
I think we've spoken about meeting etiquette, but what's equally important is how you engage with the person once you've met them, either virtually or maybe met them for coffee. Do send out a note of thanks, letting them know that you appreciate their time. And if you did talk about certain action items or follow-ups, do mention how you're going to respond to those and at what time. Show that you value the time that they've spent with you and how you're going to follow up. And if they have introduced you to other connections, for instance, once you've made that connection conversation happen as well, make sure that you reach out with a note of thanks and sort of keeping them in the loop on how things are proceeding.
Now that we've kind of gone through the entire like flow of like how we went about establishing or building a network, I think some of the platforms that we used or some ways that you can use to kick off building a network are like online, such as LinkedIn, or there are obviously like in-person events that you can go to. But starting off with like LinkedIn, right? I think LinkedIn is obviously a platform that is built for networking and creating a community for your career growth. But what that implies is that you should build a profile for yourself that actually does you favors, right? So I think before anything, before like reaching out to people, I think making sure that your LinkedIn profile is most up to date and is a really accurate and succinct in representation of where you are at in your career is really important. So I think the first step there is to make sure that your LinkedIn on your like title, it's showing kind of like where you are, whether you're working or you're a student looking for a job, or what sort of like experiences or most immediate experiences you have are. And then adding in like some sort of like branding or what you want to be known as is a good way to establish yourself and your branding. I think LinkedIn, at the end of the day, like you're branding yourself when you are networking. So just make sure that that is representing who you are.
Yeah. The flip side of that is when you are also reaching out to people on LinkedIn, a lot of people will say whether they're hiring, like actively seeking positions for certain roles, or if they're open to mentoring, right? They also mention that on their LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is also useful on the other side where you're able to see who's available for what sort of networking opportunities, and that also gives you insight on who you should be reaching out to.
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason I brought up this up is because when a lot of people reach out to me, right, like maybe I have like 100 texts in my inbox, like I don't have time to go through all of them, right?
Flex.
It's not a flex. I think it's just like, people are trying to reach out and find a job and trying to network, and I appreciate that. But I think what really helps is when I can just see their name come up, and then they have that little like headline showing what they are looking for, or like who they are and what their experience is really helpful. And like then that kind of pulls me into whether or not I want to go into their profile and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think speaking about LinkedIn and to your point about schools and establishing that, LinkedIn also has an option to join groups that are relevant to your interest areas or your past work experience or your schools that you were part of, right? A lot of alma maters have set up their groups on LinkedIn and they're very active. So I would also recommend joining groups on LinkedIn. I think people can join almost up to 50 groups on LinkedIn. So pick maybe an industry group that you're interested in, or a profile of a job that you're interested in. For instance, product management has so many groups on LinkedIn. Especially, it's also differentiated. Like, for instance, if you're in the SF Bay Area, there's a group. If you're women in product, there's a group. Or women in program, there's a group, right? So do join the groups. I think the advantages of joining the group is that you can reach out to people within those groups without having a first degree connection, or even if you don't have their personal details like their email ID, you can just reach out to them in the group. So that's super useful. And then you already are part of a community, so people are also open to talking to you because you're part of that group.
Yep.
Another advantage of these groups is that they will also post about networking events. So for instance, if there are mentorship conversations that you want to have with people who are organizing an event, then you'll know about that through these groups. So that's also a good way to find out about in real life events or other virtual events.
Yeah. I think another pro tip that I had about LinkedIn is that I followed career coaches. And I think they, like to your point, post like career events that they host sometimes. And I think those would be like good networks. And I would recommend that if you're looking for a certain like location, you can like look into career counselors or career coaches in that particular city. I think that also helps because then they post like events based in that city. Yeah, speaking of like in real life events, that is the second platform that we were going to talk about, which is going to like in-person events. They can be like webinars, they can be like conferences, they can be like networking events or like socials. Those are all like I guess platforms where you can build your network.
Yeah. So we live in San Francisco and we work in tech. So there is a platform called Luma that posts a lot about tech events that are relevant to career growth in the SF Bay Area. So that's something that you can use to find out also about other virtual and in real life events. So that's been useful for me. I think also what's helpful is that when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, or for instance, you meet them in real life, you can also ask them other platforms that they use for networking. So for instance, I met someone on LinkedIn who added me to a Slack group or a Discord group that has details of other events or details of other connections that I'd like to make. And so I've reached out to people through different platforms.
Yeah, not only that, right? There's also a lot of like clubs that people have nowadays that are becoming really popular. One of which I came across is called Monday Girl.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not in this club, but from my understanding, it's like a group of women that has like, it's a subscription annually, and you get to tap into like networks and coaches and people that are in like different industries that you're interested in. And you're able to set yourself up with like mentorship, even within like companies, right? Like even at the company I'm at, we have within the company like a platform where it's basically setting up coffee chats with people in different areas or different departments within the company. And I believe that would apply to most companies that are large.
Yeah. I think a lot of times with networking, may not sometimes have a specific ask of someone, but you're just interested in maybe they're also someone as a first gen immigrant, for instance, and you want to understand how they navigated maybe the legality of it all, right?
Right.
It may not be specific to just a job, but you're also interested in you're in a new place and you're in a new career, so there are aspects of that as someone who's already done it and what their learnings are. So that's I like these in-person events because you're also not going in there with maybe just a fixed agenda, but you're hearing so many stories of people who, and it's inspiring, of people who've been through the same journey as you and have sort of like made it.
Yeah.
So that's also nice.
For sure. Another like in-person event that I can think of that could be a way to network is like going to talks or
Yeah.
career talks,
Yeah.
or even just like someone's like TED talk or like a speech about something specific or a niche that you're interested in.
Yeah.
If you go to those, typically people in the same industry will come along to those, and that is a really good way where you can create and build a network within that particular niche.
Yeah. Also, a lot of schools within the area will have talks or have alumni come and give,
Right.
career talks or career advice, or maybe you need advice on investing or how to get into, like if you're trying to pitch for YC, for instance, a lot of alumni will come and share those. So even if you're not affiliated to a particular school, you can go out to these events because they're public events. So that's also a good place to meet people who have similar interests as you and are interested in maybe a similar career as you.
So yeah, going to those in-person events, obviously, I think some tips I want to add is that you should come prepared. Obviously, like going back to reaching out to people on LinkedIn, the same goes with like in-person events. You want to come prepared with like an elevator pitch about like who you are, what you're looking for. Obviously, don't make it like a 5 to 10 minute talk about yourself. A 2 to 3 minutes prep on like who you are, what you're looking for, what your goals in your career are is a really good way to initiate a conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, going to in-person events may be a little scary for some people, especially because you have to talk to a lot of people, a lot of strangers, and it can be intimidating.
Yeah.
And it's not always first nature to everyone to be able to talk to strangers, right? So a book I highly recommend is called How to Talk to Anyone. You can just search that up on Google. It'll be like one of the first books that come up. But in that book, it goes through like 92 tricks on how to initiate or talk to anyone, and I think it's like very easy, practical use cases and examples. So I highly recommend that book. I think it's helped me in many ways and have made me someone who can initiate a conversation with like strangers just right off the bat. So I think being prepared and making sure that you have certain skills on how to talk to people is a great way to prepare yourself for success, especially when you're networking in person.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some of the experiences and tips that we have on how to build a network. I think these have really helped us. And so we're hoping to share that with you guys so that it can help you maybe in the future or near term. But yeah, hoping to maybe in the future, Rima and I were talking about this, but maybe a snippet of it is we'd like to maybe host a in-person event very soon so that we can meet some of you people and also connect with people from different industries and just to meet people in general who are going through the same journey as we are.
Yeah. Sort of infuse some fun into networking.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it would be nice to meet people in person, right?
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. We're very excited for that. But that's just a little sneak peek on something we're working on for the future. But yeah, I think that wraps up for today.
Yep.
Let us know if you have any tips and tricks that we didn't touch on. We'd also like to learn and help, maybe in the future that would help us.
Yeah.
So we would really appreciate if you write to us. Our info is on our bio, link on Instagram, on Spotify, on YouTube.
Yeah.
So reach out to us. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Toodles.
Bye.